If you have taken a look at the Honkai Star Rail community recently, you might have noticed that it seems, well, uniquely miserable. The release of the character Cyrene has triggered a massive, perfect storm of anger. But what is interesting about this situation is that the anger isn't simple. It is really two distinct controversies running at the same exact time. On one hand, you have a very real, very legitimate, and frankly, very technical anger. It is about game design, it is about monetization, what players are calling a pay-to-fix character, and what they feel is straight-up deceptive marketing from the company itself. And then, on the other hand, you have this much louder, much more chaotic, and frankly, ridiculous war. A war that has nothing to do with gameplay, and everything to do with a character trailer. It is a fight about shipping, self-inserts, and accusations of propaganda. The problem is, one of these issues is completely drowning the other one out. So to understand what is really going on with Cyrene, we have to separate these two conflicts. We have to look at the valid technical anger, and then we have to look at the trailer war. And finally, we have to see how they collided. But before that, if you enjoy these kinds of videos, make sure to drop a like and hit the subscribe button because that helps out the channel a lot. So to really understand the reaction to Cyrene's trailer, you have to know that the trailer wasn't the start of the problem, it was just the spark. The real issue, the foundation for all of this, began with the character's release. Cyrene was a huge deal. She was a highly anticipated character, an XP, a character that is basically a copy of a fan favorite character from one of the company's older games. So expectations were incredibly high. But when she finally arrived, her kit, her set of abilities, was immediately met with frustration. The main complaint, the one you saw everywhere, was that her E0 form, her base version, the one that you get right out of the box, felt intentionally incomplete. You see, she is designed as a ramp unit. She is supposed to start a fight weak and get stronger as it goes on. But the problem was, her ramp was so slow. Her ultimate takes a while to charge that she felt borderline useless in the first wave of a fight. And that is often the most important wave, especially for players trying to clear difficult time content. This led directly to what the players called the E2 paywall controversy. Her E2, that is her second copy, which you have to spend a lot of resources or money to get, was seen as the real fix. Because what does it do? It gives her the exact starting energy she needs to make her ultimate usable from the start. This felt different to people. This wasn't power creep. Power creep is relatively normal. New characters come out and are stronger than the old ones. This is normal. This situation was perceived as the developer creating a problem, a clunky, slow character, and then selling the solution to that problem they just created. You would see posts where people are really disappointed in Cyrene's E0. She feels awful to play. Her E2 looks like the real E0. This sucks. And all of this was compounded by the patch itself. The players were already calling it the greediest patch in the game's history. It was a resource drain patch. This new, highly desired character running at the same time as 6 reruns of other top-tier characters. The result was a high-pressure, high-spend environment designed to make players feel like they have to open their wallets. It left the community feeling cornered and frankly exploited. And it is in that context, with the community already suspicious of the E0 kit, that the official 3.7 livestream aired their big showcase. This was supposed to build hype. It was meant to calm people down, to show how good the character actually was. Instead, it did the exact opposite. This is where the allegation of deceptive marketing really takes root. You see, players quickly observed that the Cyrene used in the official demo started the fight with 12 stacks of her ultimate. Now, to most people, that is just a number. Who cares, right? But to the players who had been reading her kit, this was a massive red flag. Why? Because you can't do that. That is impossible. Unless, of course, you have her paywalled E2. The implication here was severe. It is suggested that HoYoverse knew her base E0 form was flawed. They knew it was too slow to look good in their own marketing video. So they just used a whale version of Cyrene, a high-spend, fully upgraded character, and tried to pass it off as the normal one. And they didn't disclose it. And that single act, that perceived deception, was a massive breach of trust. This was the moment the community's trust evaporated. The sentiment was, wait, am I crazy? Or did the official stream Cyrene just start with 12 stacks? That is her E2, isn't it? They're not even showing us the E0 character. It proved to the community that the E2 fix wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate, calculated business strategy from the start. So now you have this powder keg, right? The player base feels financially exploited by the patch and deceived by the marketing. And it is into this environment that the new character trailer dropped. And this trailer, it split the community into two completely different groups. It highlighted a really stark cultural divide. On one side, you had what you could call the silent majority reaction. If you you looked at places like the Japanese Twitter, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People saw it as beautiful, emotional, a fitting tribute to her story. They got it. And then there was the loud minority reaction. This was happening primarily on English-speaking Twitter, and reaction is, a polite word for it. It was described by people in it as miserable, a war zone, just, toxic. And the disconnect was just jarring. And it was perfectly summarized by one person who observed, "I checked JP Twitter, everyone is so happy and emotional. And then I see EN Twitter, why 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆? Why 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆? Kill 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆. Yuri Jesus ruined." All this to still play the game and complain every patch. You had one part of the world celebrating this piece of art, and then the other part was in the middle of a complete meltdown. But what was this meltdown actually about? It wasn't about her kit, it wasn't about her lore or the story. The people who were angriest weren't talking about her E2 paywall. No, this was a proxy war, when two sides fight each other indirectly, using something else as the battlefield. And here, the battlefield was the trailer, and the war was over the self-inserts. The core complaint, the thing that started it, right, was that the trailer centered the male trailblazer, 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆. This immediately split the conversation. The reaction was visceral. You can see posts like, "Starting this BS 3 seconds in, go F yourself sobbing emoji," attached to a picture of Cyrene and 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆's hands. The first faction, the anti-𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 side, argued that the trailer was, and these are in their words, heterosexual propaganda and incel bait. And if you don't know, incel bait just means content they think is designed to appeal to lonely, frustrated men. They claim this reduced Cyrene, who they saw as a lesbian Jesus XP. Huh? I guess that's their term for a very popular female character they like to ship with other women. According to them, the trailer reduced her to a simple waifu, a passive love interest. This escalated quickly into rants like, "Fire 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆, no one likes this poo but incel virgin losers," or "Why is the game pushing heterosexual propaganda down the player's throat?" And then, just as quickly, the second faction formed, the anti-shipper side. They fired right back, mocking the first group with posts like, "Yuri lovers crying in the comments and quote retweets. I always love seeing these idiots cry," or sarcastically celebrating 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 and his wife Cyrene, Yuri Jesus who? And this is where you find the central irony of the whole situation. The trailblazer 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆 is designed to be a self-insert. That is the entire point of the character. The game encourages you to put yourself in their shoes. So the outrage wasn't really against the self-inserts, it was just that the wrong self-insert was used. The one with the wrong gender. This is the self-insert paradox, okay? The game gives you two options, 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 and stealth. It encourages you to self-insert, but the moment they show either one in a prominent story-heavy trailer, they are guaranteed to alienate the other side of the shipping war. It is a trap they built for themselves. They can't win. If this entire situation feels familiar, that is because it is. This is a repeating cycle. We saw this exact script play out not too long ago with the Firefly controversy. The parallel is identical. Firefly's trailer comes out. It has a maybe 10-second pretty harmless scene at the very end with 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆. And what happens? The exact same complaints. Back then, a content creator made a now famous post about it. Her actual post read, "The last 10 seconds of that trailer was unnecessary and really reduced how powerful of a character Firefly could be. Instead, they reduced her to a waifu, like come on." Sound familiar? But this is where it gets interesting, because this is where the hypocrisy of character reduction was exposed. You see, the internet keeps receipts. People went back and found old stream clips of that same creator celebrating Firefly. Only this time, she was celebrating Firefly's dynamic with Stell, the female trailblazer. And in those clips, she was thrilled with the waifu aspect. She was caught on video saying, and this is verbatim,
"Literally before this, I was like, wow, I just want Firefly to be like a really cute girl who we date and we just have fun with, And that's what they're giving me. They're giving me that. They're giving me what I want."
So, the mask slips. The clip is undeniable. It is her, in her own words, celebrating the exact same thing she later condemned, just with a different gender. This precedent, this Firefly case, it proves that the character reduction argument is, very often, used in bad faith. They are not arguing honestly. It is not a real moral stance about protecting the character's integrity. It is a weapon. It is a weapon used in a shipping war. And, funnily enough, it is a weapon that only seems to get deployed when a male-female pairing is shown on screen. screen. And that infighting brings us to the real damaging outcome of this entire perfect storm. Because what is happening here is the community is fighting two completely different wars at the same exact time. On one hand, you have the valid war, the one against the developers. It is about the predatory monetization, the pay-to-fix E2. It is about the deceptive marketing, the feeling of being lied to. It is a war about the game. And on the other hand, you have the, let's call it the ridiculous war. This is the one the community is fighting against each other. It is the 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗵𝗁 versus 𝗼 war. It is about which self-insert gets validation in a trailer. It is a war about shipping. And now here's the core problem. The ridiculous war is louder. It is messier. It is more personal. It is more toxic. And it gets far more attention. And all of that noise, all of that screaming about incel baits and Yuri Jesus, it completely buries the legitimate universal feedback. It drowns out the real unified anger about the E2 problem. The shipping war just swallows the entire conversation until the whole community just becomes this ball of rage, captured by tweets like, if HSR tweet ain't miserable, it ain't HSR tweet fire emoji. This is the worst possible outcome for the players, because from the outside, it just makes the community look miserable. It gets to a point where the infighting becomes the topic, with users observing. I'm starting to think these are more incel-ish than the incels they keep talking about. MiHoYo should give free therapists. And more importantly, it provides a perfect smokescreen for the company. Think about it, right? Why should they address the real difficult criticism about their monetization? Why they should answer for the E2 paywall when all of the loudest feedback they see is just this contradictory, hypocritical, incoherent mess about shipping? They don't have to. They can just ignore all of it. They can just wait for the infighting to die down and nothing happens. And so in the end, this perfect storm of anger, this massive community-wide meltdown, achieved very little. The legitimate game design level problem that E2 fixed was completely overshadowed. It was derailed, pushed off the tracks by a cyclical, bad faith culture war. It just happens over and over, and bad faith. People that are arguing aren't being honest about what they're really mad about. The loud minority, the people fighting their shipping war, effectively mutes the silent majority. And the silent majority, which is just most people, the players who aren't on Twitter all day, they simply wanted a character that felt complete and was honestly marketed. Their voices were just lost in the noise. So the real issues, the ones that actually cost players money, remain. The community is left with the exact same predatory kit they started with. But the online conversation, that is not about the kit anymore. It has moved on. And it leaves us with a pretty critical question. With a community this willing, this eager to distract itself, how can clear, unified, and constructive feedback ever be heard? But that is all from me, 𝗖𝗆𝗆𝗵𝗁, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers!